And here we are for another conversation with one of my favorite people on the planet, Chuck. How are you on this fine day? Although it's still dark for me, but how is it your end?
It was you had a very like professional throat clearing before you got in, and then like the tone changed. So you're finding this like podcast voice, and it's a skill.
Yeah, I'm trying to refine the not make. I listen to some of the affiliate ones, and I'm like, okay, I start it the same way every single time. Maybe I need to
Well,
work on that one a little bit and change that.
I was listening to our episode number 2, which is why I
Mm,
jumped on this initially prior to calling, just about like the audio quality and the recording like on
mm.
my end, and I was like, oh yeah, I probably need to record you like an intro.
Yeah, well, we don't. Yeah, I thought about it when I uploaded the stuff to YouTube. Oh, we don't. We must talk about that. In one of our podcast schedule planning meetings that we have. Those.
These are also the planning meetings.
Yeah.
Doing the thing happens the same time as trying to figure the thing out and get better at it. Because I don't know, man. Fucking life is
Oh,
just like that.
it is. And on that subject, I have to say, yesterday I had a few people reach out to me, listening to our earlier episodes, and they had nothing but good words for who you are in our chats, and said, "Sounds like you just really like talking to him." And I went, "I kind of do. Like, I've spent 2 years of my life talking to him, but this is in a different way." I said, "But we have, really good. It's just natural conversation. It's just what we're
I'm
having, and that's
very,
the idea of it."
I consider myself to be very, very fortunate and very lucky and very grateful to have that opportunity with you, especially like Lisa, not just the
Yeah, the client.
right. Well, dude, like, I don't know, just being able to, I guess that was like the initiation of a lot of this is that there's so much value in just being able to talk, like to have
Mm,
real fucking conversation, because most people, most of the time, just walk around talking to most other people about most of their problems. And it's just this
yeah,
fucking endless, like, circular discussion of like bemoaning
yeah,
life and fucking situation circle, and maybe that's also not true. I'm
no,
present situations, and like, that's like clouding a little bit of that, but also people just
mm,
kind of talk through bullshit and pleasantries like the
yeah,
weather, fucking
mm,
sports. Like, nobody speaking politics is trying to understand or have like a long discussion to be like, hey, guess what, everybody's fucking wrong, these are not binary things. We can't get like 3 people to order one pizza, like we're not going to agree on fucking abortion. That's preposterous.
yeah. It's not gonna. Or it's. And there are times in your life where you go through where I find where you just get. I don't want to have small talk
Dude,
because
that's
it's
where I'm at.
just.
I
Yeah.
can't do it anymore. I really lose my patience, and I'm really struggling. And so like, fuck, I endeavor for this whole thing to be super authentic and honest, and that's gonna be like a
Mm,
thing I have to work myself into and through. And I also don't know where the boundaries are, like with other people.
yeah.
Like, I want to talk about some of like what Vanessa and I are going through, but like that's also not my place to like put her shit out there. And so like
Yeah.
Vanessa's struggling through some things, and they're not new things. They're things that
Mm,
have been a struggle, relative to just like work and employment and like the nature of like fucking existential crisis adult shit.
yeah.
And also like some real like present day situations that are outside of the standards and norms that are worse than they should be, like in her
Mm,
environment. And that ended up like consuming our whole night. So, for reference, Wednesday night is what we've got set up as like our date night, where her parents take
mhm.
Liam, and she ended up, the last many of our last nights and weekends have like, been a lot of
Mm,
discussing through it. And so, fuck, I don't know where I'm supposed to sit as her husband and as her friend. To like, people need space. People need to
mm,
talk through their shit so that they can understand their own views and frame of reference, even more so for females than males. And like, that is very repeatedly scientifically
yes.
like research like, that's not just like some shit. Like, women talk through things as a way to understand them, rather than how men like often just internalize. It's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing's wrong.
Yeah.
Thinking,
And yeah.
what
And
the
you
fuck are
should.
you mad about? And I'm like, nothing. Why do you think I'm mad?
Yeah, it's you know, there's that meme that says, you know, oh, he's over there thinking about other women and stuff. It's like, I wonder if I put an extra something in my car, will it go faster? And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's very
Yeah, it's like
basic operating
it's a
system.
couple laying in bed. She's like laying on her back, worried. He's
Yeah,
like laying on his side, facing away. She's like,
yeah.
I bet he's
Meanwhile,
thinking about other women, and he's like, I wonder if I need to gap the spark plug.
yeah, and you know, the one thing I've learned is you know, two women in a relationship. Let me tell you, all you do is talk.
Well, and so
There's
like,
no
right,
not talking. Yeah,
I don't know where at what point like it becomes unhelpful. And
yeah,
I think
okay.
that's like that's a piece a lot of us probably don't ever find or define. And maybe
Mm,
it is one of those things that like there is no right answer. Cause like part of me is like, yeah,
mm,
get it out. Like I know you need the space to talk.
mm,
You can't talk
mm,
about it at work. And there's a million people in like your personal and professional networks that like this is not the thing to talk through with them, nor is it appropriate,
mm,
nor is it helpful. Like, but at
mm,
some point, shit, like having the same conversation with me 1,000 times,
mm,
I don't know if we're just reinforcing a lot of like the baggage and the bullshit and the stories. And even if we're not, even if these are like
yes,
real objective things to talk through, once the conversation's been had, like we need to
mm,
transition to the next step because this is not healthy or appropriate. But then I'm like,
mm.
fuck, is that me
Yeah,
bailing on my responsibility as a husband?
uh,
Like, at
and
what
I
point
think,
does that line get crossed?
and it is hard to know, particularly in a like a spousal relationship. You as someone who's outside, you can say, okay, well, we need to progress this forward, or you know, if you're talking to a friend, say, well, okay, what are we going to do about it? Sometimes when you're in that partner relationship, it can be really hard to um, feel like you can say that without going, this is going to start something now. Kind of like, or you're more because you're coming at it from a place of yes, you want to be there and supportive, but you're still protective of their feelings a little bit. It's almost like the coaching relationship where, like, you guys as my coaches can say things to me and have those hard conversations, and if someone in my immediate space were to say it, I'd be like, back the fuck up, like you know. Whereas, you know, from someone who's just one step removed, it's sometimes it's easier to hear those things. I know I was working with a client, a mindset client who was going through some stuff with his wife, and she was like, every night they were just rehashing. I said, yeah, but you need to put a time cap on it. Like, we've got 30 minutes to talk about it tonight, because if we're going to still talk about the things we talked about every other night in the thing, we're not actually doing anything to move the needle forward.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we've got 30 minutes to whatever, and then we've got to be able to move that needle forward after that time, and not just spend 4 hours in this cycle and rabbit hole down to everything that we covered over. Easy for me to say as I'm one step removed, and he's like sitting across from her going, no, you talk for as long as you want to. Just, I'm not saying no.
Well, like, and so like this is cool because I think contextually it would help. You know,
Mm,
I need to make like a sticky note to put on my computer when I do this. That like really it's for Liam, my dad, and me in that order, and I need to not worry so much about like people outside of that
mm.
for all. But anyway, like for Liam or my dad, like Sharon, your fiance, what does she do? Just for context.
She's a therapist.
Cool. Basically a coach,
Yeah,
right? Like it's just
yeah,
in a
yeah.
different scope of
Just a
practice.
coach. Yeah,
And so
yeah,
like how fucking hard is that for people like you, people like us, when you've got like two coaches trying to talk through some
yeah.
shit? Cause like where do we segment that? Like maybe I don't need to help you solve the problem, maybe I need to listen. But
Yes,
like maybe I don't need to listen, maybe we do need to solve the problem. And
the
like I don't
problem.
fucking know what the right answer is, and
I
I get
think
that one wrong all the goddamn
all
time. And
the
so does she.
yeah, and I think that's part of. I know that. Oh, who was it? It could be Brene Brown. I think when she was having some issues with her husband, in like he was coming in to solve things, and she's like, she would preface the conversation with him with, "I don't need you to solve anything for me right now. I just need to blow, you know, off steam, and you to go, they're in the right places," or "I'm looking for solutions right now," and then go into the conversation to make it very. So then he goes, "Oh, okay, give me the rules and I can play by the rules," kind of thing. And it's as women, sometimes we're saying something, we're not necessarily looking for a solution, but
Well, it's
men are
exactly.
solvers. That's just evolution. You are, oh, the tribe needs X, I'm going to go get that, or I'm going to do that. It's a very, if there's a problem,
Yeah, that is how
you
we are wired from like the
mm,
fucking dawn of humanity, is that like we're like, so let's identify the problem and solve it. And you're like, well,
yeah,
let's figure out why we feel this way about it.
mm. It's like,
And like that's
uh,
good. Like that belongs, that is necessary, that is natural. That's a part of what makes the system work, is that
mm,
women are more interested, more in tune, and more naturally equipped to manage like social situations, relationships, because like the matriarch has traditionally like been the one that holds the family together, and then by extension, like a bunch of
mm,
matriarchs build a society.
yeah,
Um, but man, it ends up fucking weird and messy in like modern times. Like there's
yeah,
so many of these things that were wired for us when it was like, we're gonna get some berries, we're gonna fucking club a deer to death, we're gonna make a fire and jamboree, awesome. Like how privileged we are to have existential crisis shit to deal with. But like, I
mm,
don't know that it's any easier. Like I've been to
no,
survival school. I've been very, very hungry. I've been very
yeah,
hungry. Dealing with like crazy, like deep hunger, not in a profound sense. Like I haven't had it over a long period of time where I was like,
mm,
malnourished or like a starved human. I haven't gone through true food scarcity in my life, but I have been
mm,
hungry enough for long enough to prompt like very deep evolutionary pieces. And
mm.
they're a whole lot easier to manage than like mind fuck shit of mental gymnastics of
Oh,
modern life.
and it
Like,
and it,
I
it
think maybe that's what drove me
yeah,
like so many times to drugs and alcohol, and like has put me in these really, really dark places. Like pain is easy to externally manage. Internal
yes,
pain, it's so much
you,
worse.
and you can't put a band-aid on it, and sometimes you can't see it coming. Sometimes it's like there's that old saying, like for kids that are, you grew up around the beach or whatever, don't never turn your back on the ocean, because guaranteed you turn back, you're gonna get dumped. And it's almost the same with your stuff at times. Like you'll be toddling along and life is cruisy, and then just something pops up that you, whoa, and it just comes from nowhere and flattens you. And then you start questioning a whole heap of other things. You don't know why it popped up. There's, a chemical surge, any sort of just stuff in it could be just your brain's bored. Go, oh, you know what? Things have been going well for a while. Let's just pop this thought into your head. And it just, you don't know why it's there. You don't know why it's come up, and you don't you can't see it. It's not tangible. So you sort of start doubting yourself and going, well, fuck, man, am I crazy? Because I'm like, um, I'm feeling this, but I shouldn't be, because we have a fortunate life and everything's, good in the nucleus. Like, what the hell? And then when you then start externally going and vocalizing it to people in your, closest circle, it's like, I don't know what the solution is, and I don't even know if I want a solution, but this is just the space I'm in right now. And it's not like, oh, I've got a sore finger. Can you fix my finger? It's like there's just this weird feeling that happens, and hormonally, or if there's a physiological thing, or just psychologically, it's just such a weird thing as humans that we have, that just pops back into your head, and you're like, didn't see that coming, got dumped.
Yeah, and it's like it's anchored in very basic like survival mechanism shit. Like our first
Mm,
episode, we talked about like our negative attention bias. It
mm,
feeds out of those same mechanisms, and like we make it far enough through the hierarchy of needs that we can
mm,
still have incredibly triggering, very like deep, primordial, like huge responses to things that sit like up at the top of like purpose and love and fulfillment. And like
mm,
it hits just as hard as like not having food and shelter, and potentially
mm,
in some ways even worse, because at least those external things, they're quantifiable, they're logical, they're rational.
mm,
You just said it, when you have like this blessed, fortunate life where you look around, you're like, We got 3 cars. We got a fucking dope house. We got money in the bank. Like, we're high income earners. We are liked. We're respected. We're good at what we do. We've traveled the world. We're all fucking healthy, blah, blah, blah. And to feel like you're in some ways like suffering just as much as you ever have in those moments that it's triggered.
And and you feel, and I think sometimes if you vocalize that in either to, you know, the wrong people, or, you know, they make you feel bad for feeling like that when,
how
as you
dare
said,
you? What
yeah,
fucking
like
arrogance and audacity do you have to bitch about anything in your life?
people are dying in Ethiopia. Like, why are you complaining about, you know, just because you're feeling crappy today, like, or your job's not going great? And so then we get reluctant to share that. And I really honestly think that, you know, and this is a whole other rabbit hole about social media, where you're seeing a filtered, curated version of people's lives, and you're like, well, I can't put on there that, oh, I'm feeling, you know, crap today, because then people go, oh, just attention seeking post or vague booking or whatever. And you're like, well, you know, or they always, oh, you're always so positive and so amazing. Well, yeah, because if I put anything else, people kind of just shout you down. So I'm just going to put that up there, even if I'm feeling like, you know, it's the worst day ever. And because people just don't understand it. And so many of our networks are virtual social networks, particularly since COVID. Like, there's definitely been less connection where we see people and we
break down. I think for most people in like their intimate, immediate social circles, I think for most people, like probably forever changed.
Yep. And most people have gone more insular, like they're happy to stay within their little nucleus and not branch out of that so much. So they're looking through the world through the lens of their computer screens and their phones. And it can be hard when you don't feel that tangible connection, but then you're like, I want to have so many times I've gone to do a post because I want to have something to say. I'm like, oh, but I can't because I've got, you know, members on this feed or other people, and I don't want to offend somebody, and I can't say this. So you go, yeah, I'm just not going to say it. And then someone will message you and go, hey, how you going today? You're like, great, awesome, really good.
And like that's how we started the call. You know, like when we very first jumped on, you're like, how you going? And I was like, I was gonna, you know, just like the standard. No, I'm good. And I'm like, dude, I'm not good. Like Vanessa and I had like a really shit showy evening, and you know, I guess like for Liam, dude, like, yeah, me and your mom are like going through navigating this season of life, and it's really hard. We made this. I talk a lot about the happiness equation of aligning expectations and reality, and we're uncovering now after, you know, 14 years of being together that there was some expectations that just weren't shared out loud early on, but not because there was anything bad or wrong or malicious or intentional, but like, fuck, you grow a lot in 14 years. You change a lot between, you know, your 20s and your 40s. Like, you know, these are spans of time that like when, you know, we met that like we just didn't know what we didn't know. And before Vanessa and I had even really like gotten together when we were at the remote long distance stage of our relationship on the phone and like in the private messages on the main site, it was, I mean, like my dream was I want to have a gym. I want to be on seminar staff like that. That is the dream for me. And I hadn't really looked a whole lot further beyond that. And she was into her like third round of schooling. It was, you know, going into her third degree, which was her master's, and just, you know, didn't look further beyond that. And like when you're in the middle of fucking grad school, you don't think like, well, I can't wait to not do the job that I'm about to fucking dedicate. Like, you know, like it's so illogical. And like even saying it out loud, it's like, no fucking duh, you idiots. Like you can't forecast that far out. But like we've reached this juncture where she's really burned out. And
what do you want to do?
You know, I have what I had wanted more than anything else my entire life, and that was like this nuclear family. And for the material stuff, it matters so little to me. And the external and extrinsic stuff, it's so hard for me to find. Right now in my life, I am immensely, immensely struggling to find like motivation to move forward, to go to the next level, to like continue to push harder and further, because I have the thing that I wanted, and that was it. Like that's all I ever wanted my entire life, was to be like husband, wife, kid, like a healthy, sound, like a real family. I wanted that more than anything that I've ever wanted. Like I've got it. And so now I'm like, fuck, we could be homeless. It'd be fine. Like when COVID was super fucking wild and shit showing, it's like, I guess we all just need to get ready for everything to descend into anarchy. And I'm like, okay, I know how to survive.
I got my homies.
I can communicate. We're super fit. Like, okay, if we got to go Mad Max, like, fucking happy days. I got you guys.
I got my team.
That's not reality, and that's not fair, and that's also not how like a woman's brain works at all.
Yes.
And like he's like, I need the base of the hierarchy of needs provided in a very different way. And I'm like, well, fuck, we didn't talk about that in the beginning, and I didn't know that that's where this would lead to, and that's not wrong, that's not bad.
No, it's
but like shit. I'm at a point where like I feel really stuck, and I don't know what comes out of the backside of this. And this will be really interesting to listen to, you know, years from now, that like, okay, if you're faced with this is an equation to solve for in a very objective, like, you know, strategy versus coaching piece. Like what, okay, this is the strategy. The strategy that I need to figure out is how I replace her income while exceeding both of our current combined incomes, because neither of us are happy with like the level that we're at in life. Because I don't know, fuck, like we're just never happy to settle because we're shithead humans, like a dog, right? We're like,
it's Donnie.
You're like, fuck, how much can I play with you?
She's like, give me. You've already given me a treat. What else have you got for me?
And so like, you know, it's this weird mental exercise that it isn't even the end game that she is seeking, or that like would be necessary for me to create, because she, as a human, intrinsic motivation structures are so strong for her that she would not like be able to like sit on her hands. She would be the worst, like just stay at home mom housewife in the world. She like, and you spend long enough in fitness and coaching, I think more so than a whole lot of career fields, and also her in aesthetic medicine. If anybody doesn't know that to this, or Liam, if you weren't sure what your mom was doing at this junction in her life, she's a nurse practitioner and she works in aesthetic medicine. And so Botox, filler, lasers, like making people look better on the outside so that they can feel better on the inside. And that's really the lens that she approaches it through. And in that world, and in our world of fitness and coaching, you run through no shortage of getting like some data of the sample of men and women who have ended up on the other side of a spousal relationship where like there is no need for contribution besides like some generally basic amount of like keeping the home. Maybe some other stuff with the kids, maybe not, doesn't matter, dude. And like being a parent is the hardest job on earth. And so this is not to take anything away from anybody who does stay at home to take care of the house, the home, and the children, because that is the most important thing in the world. That is what has allowed human society to develop and evolve to the point that is. I am taking nothing away from that at all. But she would not find what she needs for extrinsic validation to meet the internal motivation.
Yes. Yeah. Because
so I mean, answering a question that in some way doesn't exist, but she wants, and I feel like, you know, she is deserved and owed the opportunity to like let it be based entirely out of choice. Let it not be tied into any piece of obligation. Like as it sits right now, like, yeah, like we are both obligated to earn the incomes that we do, because if you pulled either one of those out of the equation, like the whole house of cards gets real fucking sketchy real fast.
Yeah.
And I've got so much baggage around that I just didn't even know about until like we really got into like talking through this in a way that like, dude, it was a hard night. It was a really hard night. You know, her work stuff and her shit it's become in a lot of ways all consuming in our life. And I think anybody that's been in a situation that has really run its course, where like the cons far outweigh the pros, and it is past a point of being like able to be reconciled in some form or fashion, I think most people know what that feels like. And I think most people know what it's like, I can't escape this thing. It is the first thing I think about in the morning. It's the last thing I think about at the end of the day. Like the only way I can't be entirely fixated on it is to either be working out, to be actively in the middle of something else that's so engaging that my brain doesn't have the ability to go anywhere, or like drugs and alcohol. Like there's only like a handful of things that allow us to change our states enough to escape what goes on in the head and the heart.
Yes. Yep.
And you know, so our Wednesday nights are date night. Fucking 25 minutes later, back to the beginning of the story. So Wednesday nights are date night. Her parents take Liam, and this thing, this shit that she's going through has been all consuming for like months at this point. And so that was my big ask, you know, right after she got home, is just like, hey, like, can we just have tonight to not talk about any of your career stuff, any of your job stuff, any of your work stuff? And she was like, you know what? Great. Like, please, let's do that. I don't want to continue to give this more of my time, space, and energy, especially on our one date night a week, especially when Liam's already over with, you know, her parents, and like, awesome. Let's do something fun. Let's have an adventure. For a long time, we like Wednesdays were our thing way before we had Liam. That was the light day that we took at the gym, because it was like this midweek reset, and we called it Wild Out Wednesday, and we did workouts like out at the beach, or like we would do something that was just like we would have a Wednesday adventure, and like we need to get back to a part of that, and that's a thing that we both know, and that's a thing we both intended. But she's also like me in that she is very much an empath. And she does very much so like hate for other people to suffer, especially if she feels like she's got the ability to help make it better for them, regardless of like what it does or means for her. Because fuck, that's how we're wired. And it just happened that like a few things went down at work, and she ended up being like the contact point, both upstream and downstream, from like ownership and management, and then from everybody like on all sides, that like it ended up being a big night for her to facilitate a lot of other people kind of like getting some of what they needed to like off their chest out in the open. Oh, weird. It's fucking med spa offices. And I think that most people could assume like what the gender mix of the employment base is. And if you're like, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, it's all women. There's like, you know, there's maybe like less than a singular handful of men involved at all in any context, and it might only be one that I can think of at present. It was two. There's only one that I can think of now between 4 offices. So like, if
that's
you know,
a big ratio.
Talk through shit to figure it out, and nobody can talk about it at work, and you've got this one person for everybody above and below like all try to talk through it with. It ended up consuming our entire night. And it got to the point that, and this is the thing I'm still trying to fucking figure out. I was like, hey, I had tried to set an expectation that we both agreed to, that like this wasn't going to be how the night went, and like you need it, they need it. This is obviously important. Like as a coach, like I get it. Especially if you don't know how you feel about a thing, especially if you don't know how you think about a thing. We don't have the opportunity for like me to use my big fucking man brain and be like, cool, now that we've actually identified, discussed the problem, we have the ability to build a strategy to solve it. But like, until we can actually be like, so what's the fucking issue? Blah, 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 bullshit. And like the head that it ended up coming to is just, she has a lot of, and I feel rightly deserved, resentment towards me that she has had to work. And that's hard to manage, because when you build the foundation of the relationship with somebody while they're going through grad school to be in like this very specific higher income earning career field, like, oh, okay.
I thought that's what you wanted
about it. And like, it's, you know, it's not the first time any of it's come up, like, especially with my highly atypical like life and career path. There have been some fucking ebbs and flows, and it was not always like, you know, a 6-figure plus like earning piece of my life to be in fitness and coaching and like consult mentorship and all that. And like, But she's also had a lot of very lean years. And we've navigated it as a couple. We've navigated it as two people that like supremely love and care about each other. But we're in this really difficult spot to navigate because in a lot of the periods of like previous seasons of life where I've really leaned into that on my end to like go do the hunting and killing to bring shit home, there's too much distance. There's not enough time. There's not enough focus. Like it becomes that too much of my attention is extrinsic and external, and there's not enough left for like her and us.
Yep.
And that's really hard for me to like reconcile. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know what it looks like to have the strategy that like is, you know, more than doubling my income while also giving more time and energy. And if you know anything about me, it's like my time at home with my family matters more to me than anything. Like you could burn it all down. Like, I wouldn't care. I'd light this house on fire right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm struggling, dude. I'm really struggling. And I don't know what it looks like on the other side of it because it's yeah.
It is a difficult space because you're right, you're dealing with someone else's, you know, thoughts, feelings, expectations when maybe it's at a point where she's like doesn't know what she wants to do, but you know, this seems like a good option because, you know, again, you can very, very clearly see, and I'm speaking as someone who views you guys through, you know, these chats and social media and just things that we've talked about in general life, and that it's, you know, that unit and that family thing is very important to both of you, and you can see that. And it's really interesting that we're having this conversation today because when I was thinking about what I want to ask Chuck today, it was going to be about relationships and particularly about the journey of you and Vanessa.
Yeah, I have made the command decision that she's the first guest that I want to take an episode 5 with. Scheduling might be a pain in the ass, and I'm happy to like. There's a ton of people that like we have already created conversation with to like set up and record episodes and stuff, but it's important to me for like the true purpose and intent of this that she's the first one that ends up being forward facing for Liam, for me. Like I don't know, she's my world.
And that's the thing is, I had actually had that thought this week is like once she did her little cameo spot last week, I went, we need to have Vanessa on because, you know, your story and evolution is really interesting. And like you guys did internet dating before it was a thing, before it was cool. Like you're on these antique message boards and, you know, that
it's so funny to like, think about now. I didn't even have a fucking smartphone when we met. She had an iPhone 1 and like she had just got it. And I was like, damn, she can send me real good sexy pics. I got this fucking like Samsung flip potato phone. I'm like, you can see something in that, right?
Yeah, it's better than what it is, I promise. But
it's an optical illusion. I promise you, this thing's fucking huge. Like a dinosaur.
And it was just weird that, you know, I thought about that, but it's you guys to external perceptions, you know, you both have put time and resource and energy into getting where you're at. And, you know, you're both in your own right, very successful people. And over time, and this is just my personal experience, is, you know, I did the same with the box. You know, that was my, you know, way that I created my identity and what I thought I always wanted, even though I didn't know that I wanted it until, you know, I found this space. And you're like, well, this is enough. This is what, you know, I want to be, and I'm going to work up the levels of, you know, 1, 2, 3. All those things were important, and then it's all of a sudden you go, yeah, but can I be something else? But I don't know what that is. And
yeah, well, and you know, so same journey that you went through in the gym, same journey that like your own coaching clients, you know, now that you're a coach and fit affiliate, and it's the same thing that like you see play out time and time again is when there's so much noise and distraction and so much pain and trauma and bullshit and so many stories, you're like, I don't have the ability to even stop and think about what I want.
Yes.
And, when you talk, like you fucking the one of the coolest and also one of the hardest and saddest things that we go through with any clients is like their first consult call. Because like you rekindle this piece of hope and this ability to dream big, and then like it just gets kicked in the dick by reality so hard that you're like, I don't even know how to fucking feel about it. And so that's really kind of what we'd come to last night is like she's just so burned out that her resentment that she's carried that we've talked about. So like the resentment that I'm speaking to is when we left Florida, the thing that took us out of Florida, and like Florida, we were in very different places. It's like I was coaching a ton, I was traveling a ton. Gym Gypsy was growing like crazy. The gym had its struggles, as all gyms do, but like we had moved into our third lease. It was an awesome building. Like I had come to understand higher ticket stuff. We had a good front end offer. We understood consistent paid traffic. I had like some really good PT clients. And that wasn't ever what she had wanted at all, because there wasn't the security and abundance that she thinks that she needs. And I don't know if it is what she actually needs, but it's a big triggering thing from her own childhood. Like there was a lot of financial volatility. They always had their family unit though. Like her mom and dad are still together. She's got a brother. They're all still very, very close. We were there on the 4th of July. Liam stayed there last night. Her parents moved from Houston to be like fucking 2 exits down. Like she has always had the one thing that I had always wanted for. And so, we sit juxtaposed on the side of, she's like, we just need like more money, more financial stability, control. And I'm like, when have you ever not felt that way? And she's like, well, I've never not felt that way. And so like me and my coach brain, I'm like, interesting, let's explore it. And you go through the list. You're like, here's what we've got in checking. Here's what we've got in savings. Here's what we've got in traditional investments. Here's what we've got in cryptocurrency. Here's what we've got in equity in the house. Here's what we've got in our business accounts. Like,
But I think
that's not the answer, because she's like, yeah, but as soon as I pull the plug on my income generation, all of those cease being true because the income's not made up for. And then I'm like, well, I don't know how to reconcile that. I mean, I can make money. I can make money occur in my life. It's a thing that like I know about the skill of producing income.
Yep.
But I don't know how to do it at the expense of the things that matter the absolute most to me, that I don't know how to wrap my head around. I don't know how to make these trade-offs happen, but they have to happen. And like, that's an unfortunate consequence. Like that is a piece of sometimes reality is reality. And Vanessa's a serial apologizer, right? And I think everybody, like, Liam, your mom, at this juncture in her life, she says, I'm sorry, and she doesn't even know why. And it's been a thing for years. And she'll say, I'm sorry. And I will say, for what? Or why? Or about what? Or tell me more. And it's been going on for a very, very, very long time. Fuck, that got me all ranty and rambling. I forgot where I was going with it. So she's like this serial apologizer. Oh, this brings us back on track. And that was a thing last night. I was like, dude, this is a crystallization of discontent. Like, this has to stop, because it feeds into a lot of language that causes you to diminish your value, diminish your worth. It also causes you to take on emotional, mental responsibility for other people's bullshit and problems. Like, you cannot be the one that is sorry for the state of the world. And it was fucking joking. And she's like, well, maybe I'll just say sucks, don't it? And I was like, yeah, actually, fuck yeah. Because like right now it's like, I need to make an enormous amount more money.
Yep.
And I'm going to have to trade out time with Vanessa and Liam for that. And that sucks, don't it? But like, that's fucking like, that is the unfortunate reality at this juncture.
But do you think like they're like completely not involved, like don't know?
Oh, dude, talk like that's the point of this. Remember,
is,
You're my
you know,
mindset coach. We're just documenting my mindset coaching for my son to be like,
well,
holy shit. At least all the other kids had the illusion that their parents had shit figured out. You guys were
yeah.
full on shit show and be like, trust me, we're better than most.
And you are more evolved than most for sure. But you know, like and this is a pattern that I do, is that when you feel uncertain in an area, so you know, career, for example, you revert back to the most base thing that you've ever, you know, felt gave you that security, and you know, or the thing that you felt like was creating insecurity for you. So you know, in a younger life for me, it was, you know, and we've talked about in my coaching sessions with you about limiting self beliefs around money and contributing, and like, you know, my main focus in the gym was like, well, I've got to work hard, I've got to pay my way, because you know, that's, I've got to contribute. Whereas you know, when I started, you know, in the relationship I'm in now with Sharon, it's like, well, like the other day I was having a moment, because I'm like, well, I need to start generating income. I need to start earning, because like there's nothing coming in. And she's like, we can live off my income. It's fine. You don't need to
But it's
be.
also this crazy fucking story because like you have more money
Yeah.
coming in than you've ever had.
Yeah.
You are making
And
more
it's,
money than you ever made. But like the fucking joke of being an adult in modern life is so crazy and mindfucky. And so like exactly what you're speaking to, right? Like it triggers all of our most base feelings of the things that, you know, we would hope to resolve that. And so for me, I'm like, anything, like any amount of suffering that comes into my life, I'm like, the family is the answer. As long as we have the family, everything's okay. Vanessa always had the family, but for a lot of periods of time, they didn't have the money. And she's like, no, you can have a family, but when you have no money, like shit sucks. And I'm like, nah, trust me, I had no money and no family. I promise you. But like, that's not
double
for me
down
to
on that.
put on her.
No,
And
and if you lose, so some of the people that I've worked with, it's particularly women, it comes down to like, you get to this point where you start to, you're a wife, mother, you know, business owner, employee, daughter, sister, cousin, friend, but who am I in the middle of all of that? Like who am I as, you know, Vanessa or whoever we're talking about, is like, they get to a point where it's like, well, I'm all these things to all people, but who am I to me after a while? And like, well, and then you start to filter what you see other people doing. So, you know, externally, if you're looking at, you know, like your flexibility in the work you do, you're in and out, like you can jump on a Zoom anywhere, and you've got, you know, some freedom in your schedule, and you can still jump on and do seminars. When you're stuck in a facility with, you know, the same people doing the same things and hearing the same bullshit all the time, it can look like that this is where it's like almost like a prison. It's like, well, I'm doing all these things, but I don't have the freedom.
Yeah.
And
and especially when it's
thing.
compounded, like, you know, you'd mentioned social media, but then also for her, like all day, every day, she has these women coming in that are getting multiples of thousands of dollars of products and services multiple times a year. And man, does that fuck with your perception. But she's I don't know. I guess maybe in life nobody's owed anything, but as her husband, as the patriarch of the family, as the one that's supposed to be in this provider role, I owe her the ability to have a chance to step back and to be like, you know what? Who am I for me? When I don't have to worry about my boss, when I don't have to worry about my coworkers, when I don't have to worry about a paycheck, like when I can have the fucking like the right and the privilege to just not worry about being a piece of having to hold it together, maybe I get to figure out who I am and how I tick.
Yeah. And it's a weird space to be in for you as the other half of that.
Well, and so this is where it got like, you know, this is where it got like real crazy last night. So, you know, we had a fight, so much as Vanessa and I like have fights, and we got loud, we yelled. I slammed one door one time. You know, like we really work, we work on trying to be good people, but fuck, dude, at some point, like emotions are emotions, and like bottling them in is like that's not the answer. And so it was a shitty fight, like in both directions. And we worked through some stuff, but in the process of getting to where we could work through some stuff, I absolutely broke in a way that I have never broken previously emotionally in my entire life. It was an out of body experience. I couldn't, it was like a panic attack, but a panic attack of crying and sobbing and just dumping emotion. And what it was it was a bunch of hugely triggering stuff from my own childhood at the breakdown in my biological parents' relationship that was like the movement into their divorce. And you know, just as the fight was shitty, and I was like, fuck, maybe you'd be happier without me. Like, and I'm like, you know what, fuck, maybe you'd be happier without me. Like, we both know that not to be true. And like we refuse to ever, like, the D word is unutterable for us because like we've both been previously divorced. We know what it's like to not be with the right person. Like, fuck, if there is one person that like I feel good about my odds in navigating this life and whatever comes after, like, it's Vanessa. I've got a crazy fucking story that I'll table for now, but like I saw Vanessa in a dream when I was 15, and I'll fucking polygraph that. Her and I, like, I believe some fucking out there shit, but I don't care. It's my fucking podcast. Liam, you know, I'm still trying to figure out what I think about God and spirituality and the universe. But I do believe, like, mind to matter. I believe in there being frequencies and vibrations, and I believe in a lot of manifestation and creative shit because it can be defended scientifically. Whole nother fucking story for another day. And so what ended up, anyway, like, divorce, not a thing, not an option, but the utterance of the things that are around that, it put me into a place in the nature of the fight that was really based on me failing as a provider, was hugely triggering of a lot of the stuff that I don't have a great answer on for like my own parents' divorce, but that's been a piece of it that I at least know that is one element. Like, there's a fucking ton of elements, but my dad had lost his job and was between jobs, and my mom was like hugely triggered by the idea of financial scarcity, and especially, you know, fuck, like, I get it, dude. You've got a kid. And that's kind of like, you know, for Vanessa, like, that's a big piece of the struggle where I'm like, we'll be fine. You could fucking quit tomorrow. Like, we're sitting on enough money that like we could go an entire year of you not doing anything. Like, we'd have a year to figure it out before things really got bad. But like, that's not how her brain works, nor will it ever work like that. And so anyway, our fight that was tied into some amount of me shortcoming as a provider, it triggered some repressed memory, piece of trauma, whatever, and it broke me like no other thing that I can recall in my life has ever put me in a place like that. And what it helped me come to, and what helped, you know, us kind of talk through and really like trying to work on navigating through this and work through it together, is like, I've got a lot of baggage and hangups about the idea of being this sole income provider, because I had an experience that built a framework and a story in my head, because there was this period of my life where my mom was like the hardest working fucking person I knew. She was a single mom with 3 jobs. And then like she met Jack, and like it transitioned into a very, very different life and lifestyle and world. And it gave us incredible financial security. But I also never had that fatherhood experience piece, because like I mentioned earlier, like he worked, and he still works. He takes 2 days a year off. And so I have a subconscious reservation, hesitation, and block that didn't really get to last night. Is like, I'm fucking terrified of being the sole income provider, because I don't want to, on this one side, like, lose the family and the family interaction that matter more to me than anything we could ever buy in a million fucking lifetimes. But also, like, I don't want you to become a shell of a human and not be the person that I fell in love with, and not rise to your potential and not be who I know that you can be. And both of those are not true. Those are both stories that I have framed in my head based on my own experience, and like trying to come to terms with when you know that like your bullshit is your bullshit. fuck, is that hard?
Yeah.
Um,
It's and I think probably for you too, because, you know, as you've said like 1,000 times on our chats, like, this nucleus is the most important thing. This is your center. This is your being. This is your reason and for being, is these two other humans that are your ride or dies. This is your group. And to have someone say, well, maybe you're better off without me, triggers that in you, in that, not about but having that taken away when that's all you've ever really wanted. And now you've got that, and I'm content with that. And, you know, that probably contributed to a lot of that, is going, this is all I've wanted. Now I have it. And then to consider that it might not be, is like, even as far reaching as that is, it still flicks a switch where you hit that fear response where you're like, and it becomes overwhelming.
Oh, dude, I was, by the end of it, I was on the floor in the bathroom, sobbing uncontrollably, hyperventilating. And
Yeah.
as I was vocalizing, it sounded like a child speaking. And it was, I was saying, I want a family. I want a family.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. It was 4.5-year-old me.
Yeah.
And it was just really triggering. And those are stories in my head about, like, you know, the reality that would be created is that I would become, you know, Jack and she would become my mom. I'm like, that's fucking crazy. And I know it's crazy.
Yes. Well, it's not crazy. It's, we have to live
100% of like your sample size, right? Where you're like,
yes, that's right. And it's and we filter our perception and feelings through lived experience and through the stories and what we know. And me being one step removed from you, like, I know that you wouldn't turn into that, because, and yes, there still would be some trade-off of time, but knowing you as I do, I know that you would find a way to still make that stuff a priority and find balance, which doesn't exist, but still make that a priority, going, yes, I'm investing more time and effort here, but this is going to be more quality and more meaningful. And I'm, you know, I guess, so my experience when I was a child, like, I was always like, I'm not going to be the person that I had role modeled to me, you know, through my father and stuff. So it's like, you do everything you can actively do to be different to that. So in this situation with you, it's like, you know, Jack is a good man, and he worked hard and he provided well, and that was his love language, is to work and to provide.
Yeah.
Yours is different, and I work and I provide because I need to, you know, do these other things which satisfy me and fulfill me. But so I think that you would actively work to not be that extreme. You would find somewhere in that, and like, it feels hard when you're in the middle of a storm to then be able to go, it's all or nothing. It's either I'm all in and I'm working 24/7, or fuck it, we're all out. We're going to live in our car and we're just going to drive around the country and you know, be gypsies. And it's like, in the middle of the storm, those are your two choices. It feels like, rather than going, well, actually, you know, let's, in a calmer, you know, less in the middle of the fire state, and go, okay, let's see what this might look like, or let's start gradually increasing one, and then, you know, bringing Vanessa's stuff down, and like, it's not that tomorrow she's walking out the door and quitting, and you're suddenly going, okay.
Well, I mean, last night I tried to take her phone from her to call and quit on her behalf, which is not my place, and it didn't happen. But yeah, it's really hard when you are very emotionally triggered and you're in these states that are based on our stories and trauma, to not have just these crazy scenarios run through in your head that are so far to any extreme. And like, that is almost never the case of how anything plays out in the real world. And you know that to be true, but it doesn't make it any easier to go through. And so, you know, but then it ends up really mind fucky for me, because I know the right answer. Maybe I don't. Fuck. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. I don't know anything, nor do I know what the right answer is. But what feels obligated to me as the right answer is to be the traditional classical provider that takes care of making sure that we have all of like the economic stability.
Yeah. But
that's not a, there's a ton of people that do it. It's like, that's a very normal thing, but my previous experiences of that make it a very distasteful thing for me. And I've also seen it play out the other side of a lot. So fuck, the gym is such an interesting place to learn life lessons and observe and see people, because we had talked about like that stay at home, like spouse, whatever. How many interactions have you had with the person that sits on the other side of it that substantiates all of it? And like, you know about like the two-way resentment, where like that's a big thing. And then like also the detachment of time and energy, and the shift in the focus and priorities, that a lot of how humans had evolved to be set up in these nuclear family units are really at odds with a lot of pieces of modern life. And that really is just those things that's like, sucks, don't it?
Yeah.
It would be very different, like, for us to have this conversation, 60 years ago, when the dollar retained 85% of its purchasing power. And like, there's just, it's hard, but I owe her at least what she has given me, and the ability to like find myself and to pursue passion. And that was a discussion on the table very early on, and we were in alignment of all of that. And we did both, at the time, we thought we both wanted like the gym and fitness adventure life, and like we had that. And it turns out that's not the thing that like she wanted. And she wanted for more financial security and a higher income. And my skill set as a business owner and a gym owner at the time, like, it was not the answer to that call. Like, I think we could do it now. Like, that's easy, but like, there's also the opportunity cost. Like, I don't have time to go and like get another gym up to speed to make $1 million a year as a fitness facility, when we're like, okay, what happens in the next 30 days? Anyway, she's an incredible woman, and an amazing wife, an amazing mom. And she's given me an enormous amount of life opportunity that I should have extended back to her in a better, more deliberate way earlier. And that's on me. I have to like sit with that. And I will always regret for the rest of my life that she was so fast to go back into work after Liam was born.
Yeah.
That will be one of my largest life regrets. And she regrets it. And that's where the resentment, like that was a big piece of like, the back and forth of my atypical, unconventional life. Like, that's ebb and flowed as like a piece, but really crystallized as resentment was like in the move to Austin, having just had a baby and being in a new place and not being settled and not having like house and home sorted, and to have a newborn and be like, and off to work you go.
Yeah.
And it's not because I wasn't working. It's just that my flexibility is both at times the blessing and the curse. It hugely facilitates a ton of pieces of our life that work way better because I can go do things for the house, the home, for her, for Liam, doctor's appointments, banking shit, signing paper. Like, there's a lot of awesome pieces of adult life that are facilitated, but like, it's not enough to sit on the other side of it. Be like, so what?
Yeah. But I think you need to give yourself a little bit of self-compassion and care. And I say this as, someone who cares about you and sees you, in that, you can only go by the information that you have presented to you at the time. So, you don't know what you don't know. And if, as you said, you guys had sat down and gone, oh, this is what we're going to fitness adventures, and this is what we're going to do, and this is going to fulfill us. If nothing else is communicated, like we were talking on a call yesterday, you can't read minds and understand that even if someone's saying yes to something, that they're saying no. And as an adult, like when you're at that stage in your life, you may not have necessarily had the skills to go, I'm going to ask another question. I'm going to ask another question. Like, we talk about in affiliate, you're asking, well, why is that important to you? Why does that matter? Why is that important? Back then, you know, you may not have had that depth of skill that you have now, and you're looking at back then with through the lens of what you know now. And, you know, you need to be a little bit kinder to yesterday, Chuck, and Vanessa needs to be kinder to yesterday, Vanessa. And like, you guys made the best decisions at the time. When you look back on it now, you're like, oh, I wish we'd done that differently, or you regret that. But at the time, that was the best decision you could make. And you need to look back on that time with and give yourself a, you know, it's okay. And, you know, we did the best we could with what we had in that moment. Now that we know better, we do better. We can't undo that, but we need to look at that through a lens of a little bit of kindness, because otherwise you're going to keep circling back to it. You can't change it. You can't, you know, put Liam back where he came from and just redo that process. It's like, you know, everything happens for a reason. So all those things got you to this point today, even though, you know, you didn't have a great night, but to the life you've got today. So it's just a process of learning and evolving. And in 10 years, you guys are going to have conversations and discussions that you're going to look back on these, and it's going to seem like this was, you know, just a tiny little ripple in the wave, not like the storm it feels like at the moment, particularly when you're going backwards and beating the shit out of yourself for something that you did 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that you can't, you know, you're a different person then. And I didn't know you then, but you're, you know, even in the 2 years I've known you, you've changed as a person just from what I've seen in our interactions. So all we can do as humans is continue to do the best we can on any given day with the information we have. So now you have new information, Vanessa has new information, and then it's like, okay, how do we go forward with this information and what we want? And what does this now look like? And that's different information to what you had 15 years ago.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like that, and that ends up being like part of the hard part is like, you know, none of this is necessarily a new conversation overall, and like, you know, my ability to lackadaisically drift through life, which is not the case, but like it can be the perception, like you said, like you're in fucking prison. When you're like, well, but I'm slaving over here in these fucking Botox mines, and you're at the airport, suck a dick.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we've gone through a lot of it, and like that's a really hard thing to sit with. It's like you should have been doing better sooner. And I know that like shoulds are bullshit. Like, you know, like I understand like I know all the things, right? Like I know all the coaching frameworks. I know all the pieces. Fuck, I've been through more counseling and therapy than probably most people. And like regret's just a hard one. And like
it is.
Those are the big crystallizing life lessons where you're like, fuck, I fucked up. But I didn't fuck up right now. I fucked up back here.
Yeah.
And I can't do anything about it, but start moving in a better direction from here.
Yeah. And, you know, it's about acknowledging it and, you know, giving, you know, 5 years ago, Chuck and Vanessa a virtual, you know, a mental hug, and it's okay. And being able to let that go and going, hey guys, you know, if you could sit down from yourselves 5 years ago, go, you guys, this is going to feel like it sucks, but you know, it's all going to be okay. And it's just a season. And
and like I don't know, does that make it better or worse, right? Like knowing those lessons, we're like, we look back and we're like, 4.5 years ago when Liam was first born, like if you would have showed us this like snapshot of our life, like you stripped away all the existential stuff and you're like, here's the pictures, here's the video, here's the account balances, here's the house, you'd be like, fucking Made in the Shade, we nailed it. But that's just how the process goes.
Yeah, and it's just that evolution. We're always changing, and what we think we want is not necessarily what we want. And you know, I always wanted, you know, I was always a person that chased the next job, the next promotion, the next higher thing, to have the next thing. Whereas now my life is, I'm happy just to be at home and with, you know, what we've got. It's like, it's a very simple life, and I don't need to fill it with things. And that's a different place to where I used to be, where I felt like I've got to keep achieving. I've got to keep being the next thing. And, you know, a little bit, I guess, where Vanessa's been, and she's always been that high achiever, I guess, and, you know, pursuing the next thing to be, you know, as good as she can be. And then at some point you go, but is that you know, where does that fit with what I want now? It seems, you know, very
Well, and like, dude,
easy and
she
unfulfilling.
is quite literally like world class at what she does.
Yeah,
It's not that just she does that. Like, she gets flown around to do trainings. She's
yeah,
got other companies that want her to come and do training stuff for her. She's got people that fly from other states to like have her do their fucking Botox and shit. Like,
yeah,
it's not that she
yeah,
doesn't love what she does. It's not that like she's having any question about it. Like, she by nature, she's a very creative left brain person, and so she gets
mm,
to express creativity in a way that comes to life almost immediately, that also changes how people's internal relationships with themselves works in a very,
yeah,
very, like, very important, very cool way that
mm,
would be an amazing thing to just talk about and record with her at some point. But
yeah,
it's that she doesn't have the ability for it to be optional.
yeah.
And that's
And
what
that's
she
the
wants more than anything. She's like, she's like, you fucking know me. I could not just be a stay-at-home mom or wife. I would
yeah,
lose my fucking mind. Like, I will always be productive. I will always
mm,
want to make and hold my own money, because like she
yeah,
didn't have money growing up. And then her first
yeah.
husband like took all the finances in and gave her an allowance. And like there was a very
Oh, fuck.
unhealthy financial dynamic. And so like
Yeah,
that's part of where this weird line in the sand exists. I'm like, if you're always gonna work, if you always want to generate your own income, regardless of how much we have, like, what? But she's like, fuck you. I know it doesn't make sense, but
yeah,
I need it to be optional. That's the
yes.
ask. That's
And
the
that,
obligation that I need to deliver on for my wife and for my family. I need to
and
make her income irrelevant in our overall like
scheme of
financial
things.
house, not because it's necessary objectively, but because
Yeah,
subjectively it's necessary for her.
yeah. And you give people the option, and then they usually don't need to take it. It's just knowing you've got an escape. It's like, um, I used to have a friend who suffered with a lot of anxiety and couldn't drive on a highway. And we did a 10-hour road trip, and I mapped every exit on that highway so that she could follow along as we drove, to know that she had an escape if it ever got too much, that we were, you know, 5 kilometers from the next exit. We
Yeah.
never ever took a fucking exit on that entire trip, but she knew that she had the exits.
Yeah. And
So
like,
it's a similar thing. Yeah,
oh man, we'll have to, this will be fun to talk to Vanessa. Like, I don't know. I know we're getting long, but like, that's
yeah,
part of mindfuck is I'm like, we don't have the option in income, but
mm,
we have the option in accumulated assets that exist literally for this fucking purpose. I'm like,
yeah,
why do humans try to build better financial futures? It's like, for most people, it's like retirement, which is like, well, what is
yeah,
that? It's like, so I can keep doing my normal life stuff, but not having to work to make that happen. I'm like, cool. Let's just do
mm,
some of it now.
yeah. Enjoy it
If
now.
people like us that like work the way we do, that like just we like doing shit and bringing things to life. I like making money. She likes making
Yeah,
money. Like the money we have for retirement, like fuck, we're not even gonna use it. By the time we get there, it's not even gonna matter. We're just gonna like give it away to fucking charity or Liam. And I'm like, so that's hard because I'm like, the option is there.
yeah,
But the option's not there in the way that she wants the option to be there.
mm,
And that's where I'm like, sucks,
yeah,
doesn't it? I'm like, maybe that's it. Maybe it's not. It's very fucking, it's difficult. And I guess I don't have any good fucking answers. All I have are more questions. I don't know shit about fuck. Being a husband is hard. Being a dad is hard. Being a fucking human in 2022 in adult life is hard. But like, our heart is the hardest to wrap our heads around because it really isn't.
yeah.
And
And I
that's the
think,
mind fuck of all of it, is like when you have seen people like killed,
mm,
when you've seen people die, when you know people who like have been killed and have killed
mm,
themselves, and when like life just runs its course, and when you know what absolute abject poverty looks like. Like I've been lucky enough to travel the world. I have seen the poorest of the poor, and I've
mm,
seen them happy as shit. And that's
yeah.
really hard to fucking wrap your head around when you're talking through the stuff that we are.
And
I
it's,
don't have any good fucking answers.
but you know, the good answer that we have is that who you are as a person, who Vanessa is as a person, and the foundation that you've built is like fucking, you know, solid as shit. And you both ultimately want the same thing, and that's you three homies to ride or die together for a very long time. So the rest is just details. You will, come at it with clearer heads and take a breath and then go, okay, how do we make this work in smaller steps, and then just go fucking full send. And if anyone can navigate that, I have zero doubt it's you two humans who are outstanding humans, my friend. And I know it's been a rough 24-hour period, but I appreciate the grace and honesty of which we've had this call today. And I have zero doubts that that you guys have the skills and the foundation to keep being awesome humans together while I get attacked.
Right.
Even Dottie agrees.
The dark sense of humor of the universe and its love of irony is like, you guys are so fine. Shut up.
Yeah. No, you rock. You're awesome people, and I love you dearly. And it's all going to be good.
Well, I love you, lady. I will talk to you
All right.
soon.
Talk to you soon.